Well, the Miami Hurricanes have been in the ACC for 25 years now. It's hard to believe. And of course, they are still yet to win it a single time, which leads to one of the weirdest stats in all of college football, which is, of course, the South Carolina Gamecocks, who won the ACC way back in 1969, still have more ACC championships somehow than the Miami Hurricanes. It seems like they invent new ways every single year not to win the ACC. What can they do in 2025? We're going to find out in today's video because it's time for another prediction. I know stuff. Oh, yeah, good morning, that's Uncle Lou here. That's right, it is me, Lou Stradamus, live on LouTube for you. Thanks for watching. Up today, a Miami Hurricanes 2025 college football season preview and a game-by-game prediction. You can see I've got the schedule pulled up on the screen over here. In a minute, we're going to go through it game by game. I'm going to give you a winner and a loser for every single week. Now, when Miami joined the ACC 25 years ago, it was almost a given that it was like, well, I guess we're going to see Miami and Florida State in the ACC championship game almost every single year. And somehow it's yet to happen. And that's mostly Miami's fault, I guess. Miami's only made the ACC championship game one time. That was back in 2017, I believe, 2016 or 2017. Mark Richt, the coach down at Miami. Then, of course, they lost that ACC championship game. Now, they've been really, really close a couple of times, and I made a joke at the beginning about them finding new ways sort of not to win it almost every single year. There's been several years where they've been close. There's been several years where I think Miami was probably a good enough team to win the ACC, but for whatever reason, self-inflicted wounds, pointless losses, upsets, whatever the case, they seem to find a way to sort of play themselves out of it, and last year was no different. They had one of the best offenses maybe that they've ever had at the University of Miami. The problem was, coupled along with that, was probably the worst defense Miami has ever had. It was just absolutely horrific, and they were having a pretty good season. They were 7-0, 8-0, whatever it was. They had beat Duke, and then they took two losses in the last month of the season to two teams that they were better than. They lost on the road to Georgia Tech, and they lost on the road at Syracuse in the last week of the regular season, and it was really that Syracuse loss in the last week. It was just absolutely heartbreaking. Not only did that loss keep Miami out of the ACC title game, but because we had moved to a 12-team playoff, that was basically a win and you're in the playoff game for Miami at that point. They were sitting on one loss. Had they beaten Syracuse, they would have gone to the ACC championship game. And whether they won or lost that ACC championship game, they would have gotten into the playoffs. So that loss at the end of the year to Syracuse was absolutely heartbreaking for Miami, keeping them ultimately out of the playoffs, of course, out of the ACC championship game as well. Now, they catch a break this year. They don't have to play Georgia Tech. But they do have, as you can see over here, back-to-back road games to close out the regular season. So is this going to be another situation here with Miami where, they kind of play themselves into the top 10 in the first sort of 75% of the season and then get to the month of November and kind of stumble their way to the finish line and play themselves out of a potential ACC championship game appearance and a playoff appearance? We're going to find out. Again, I'm going to go through this schedule game by game and give you a winner and a loser in a minute. You see the Notre Dame game, obviously, at the beginning of the year looms large, too. Now, that's a non-conference game, but still a huge game for Miami to sort of get things started on the right foot. Let's wrap up 2024. We'll look ahead to 2025, their roster, who they lost, who's coming back, any coaching changes, and then we'll do the schedule. So last year, like I mentioned, they started out hot. I believe it was just 8-0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-0. Started out 9-0, then lost two of their last three games. They absolutely destroyed Florida on the road in Gainesville to start the season, 41-17. A close call against Virginia Tech, a controversial game at the end there, but they came out on top 38-34. Same thing the following week on the road at Cal. So you see a little bit of a pattern, and this was Miami's problem last year. The defense kept letting them down. 38-34, they beat Virginia Tech. 39-38, they beat Cal. Those are two bad teams. Now, Miami's offense played well there, obviously, with Cam Ward, but the defense, it seemed like Miami was playing with fire week after week after week after week, and everybody kind of started waiting on them to get burned. And it finally happened there in the last month of the season. They won one of the best games of the year, I think, on the road at Louisville. Just an unbelievable game, 52-45. Again, needing the offense to bail them out in the second half as the defense wasn't able to stop a nosebleed. They beat Florida State. They beat Duke 53-51. I mean, it's just a pattern, 53-51, 52-45, 39-38, 38-34. Now, they won all those games, but those are one-possession games against not very good offenses, honestly. And it's one thing for that to happen once, maybe twice over the course of the season. Your defense has a bad day. It wasn't the case with Miami last year. Their defense was absolutely horrific. And it caught up with them. They lose to Georgia Tech 28-23. Defense played okay. The offense couldn't get out of neutral in that game against Georgia Tech. And without the offense, Miami just wasn't a very good team last year. They relied on that offense all season. When it didn't show up on the road at Georgia Tech, they lost 28-23. Now, they rebounded with a big win over a bad Wake Forest team, 42-14. But then there was that fateful game on the road at Syracuse to close out the regular season that they lost 42-38. Again, the defense just letting them down in the second half, the fourth quarter of that game. And that cost them literally everything. It cost them any shot they had at the ACC championship and any shot they had to make the playoffs. They lost a bowl game. That was a weird situation where Cam Ward quit at halftime. And yeah, he quit. I mean, if you start doing something and you don't finish it, that's the literal definition of quitting. So you can tell me he planned to do it and it was all part of the plan. That's fine. That's great. Maybe it was. I'm not saying he did anything wrong or bad or whatever. I'm just saying the guy quit at halftime and Miami lost to Iowa State in the Pop-Tart Bowl. So that gets us forward to 2025. Now, what did they do in the offseason to try to address some of these issues? Well, they did about what you would think they would do. They went into the portal. Now, say what you want about Mario Cristobal as a head coach, and he's had some questionable, it's probably a nice way of putting it, questionable game time decisions or game day decisions over the years. There's the infamous fumble against Georgia Tech a few years ago that cost him a game. There's some situations going back to his time at Oregon where he made similar kind of mistakes. One thing you can't knock Mario Cristobal for is his recruiting. The guy is an elite level, A++ level recruiter, right up there with the best in the business. And he's put together a staff of excellent recruiters too. And the overall talent level at Miami has increased every single year since Mario Cristobal has been there. And that's the case again this year, I think. Now, they lose Cam Ward. They bring in Carson Beck. Carson Beck's a good quarterback. He's probably a top 10 quarterback in all of college football. He's not Cam Ward. He's not going to be Cam Ward. He's just not that good. So there is going to be some amount of drop-off specifically at the quarterback position for Miami. So you got to look at other ways to help make that up. Improved running game, maybe, right? Obviously, better defense. So what are they doing around Carson Beck to try to get Miami from sort of the 9-10 win bubble of the ACC where it seems like they've been for a while, over that hump to a potential ACC championship and a berth in the 12-team playoff? Well, they bring back some important players. Mark Fletcher at running back, Jordan Lyle at running back, a bunch of offensive linemen, including one of, if not the best offensive lineman in the country, Francis Mauigoa. I don't know how to pronounce these Gilligan's Island's people's names, but you know who I'm talking about, Francis Mauigoa, whatever his name is. They got a tight end coming back on the defensive side of the ball. They've got some talent there. Again, it didn't show up really in terms of overall defensive effort last year, but Ruben Bain is an NFL player. They've got Akeem Mesidor back. They've got a couple of linebackers back. They've got Frederick Jr. back in the secondary. There's talent there. They then went out and sort of backfilled that talent with portal players like you would expect they would have. I mentioned Carson Beck on offense. They completely reloaded at the wide receiver position too. Xavier Restrepo, who's been one of my favorite players to watch in college football over the last couple of years, is gone. He's off to the NFL. And he was kind of their go-to guy. You know, if it was 3rd and 11 and it seemed like there was no way you were going to pick up first down, somehow Restrepo caught the ball 12 yards downfield every time. It was unbelievable. The guy just had a knack for getting open, and he made every catch. It was just a lot of fun to watch. He's gone. So they bring in CJ Daniels from LSU. Now, not a lot, didn't do a lot there, but LSU's loaded at wide receiver every single year. So doesn't mean he's not any good. Get buried on the depth chart type of deal. Keelan Marion from BYU, Tony Johnson from Cincinnati. So a trio of wide receivers they bring in to fight for playing time there, along with what they've recruited the last couple of years under Mario Cristobal. I think they'll be okay at wide receiver. Carson Beck, again, not going to give you what you got from Cam Ward. He doesn't have the scramble ability, sort of the outside the pocket type of stuff that you saw Cam Ward do sometime, extending plays. But he's got an NFL arm. The guy can make every single throw in the book. He plays the position of quarterback really well. He gets you in and out of the right and wrong plays, reads the defense well. He did have the turnover issue last year. Now, he started for 2 years at Georgia, and overall, he did not have a turnover issue. It was a 3 or a 4 game stretch in the middle of the season last year where, for whatever reason, and as a Georgia fan, I'll go to my grave not knowing what was going on there. I mean, I was ready to jump out a window. It was bad. I think he had 2 or 3 games in a 5-game stretch where he threw 3 interceptions. It was just mind-boggling. I don't know if he was having problems with that TikTok star that he was dating down there at Miami or what the hell was going on with him, but his head obviously wasn't in the game. But outside of that 3 or 4 game period, I thought he played great. I thought he was Georgia's best player on offense last year. Without Carson Beck, Georgia probably goes 7-5 last year because I don't think Gunnar Stockton was ready to play for the majority of the season. So I think he's a good player. Now, he's coming off that elbow injury. I don't know a lot about that elbow injury. It seems like not a lot of It's not an ACL injury, right? So, like, ACLs are bad, but, like, we see 100 ACL injuries a year. So you sort of have a time frame in your mind of what, how long it might take a guy to come back from an ACL, depending on, what position he plays. You don't have a lot of history with this type of an injury, at least not that I'm familiar with. Now, according to everybody at Miami, he'll be ready to go by the start of the season. He didn't practice much during spring, didn't throw the ball much during spring. Reports are now that he's back to throwing the ball. And again, even though he's a new quarterback at Miami, he's got 2 full years of starting experience at Georgia and was at Georgia for 5 full years, I believe. Got there in 2020, the COVID year. So 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2023. Yeah, he was at Georgia for 5 years. So even in practice, he was going up against some pretty good defenses every day, right? Now, you can look at his numbers at Georgia. He's got 2 of the best 5 passing seasons in Georgia history, period. So if you're a Miami fan and you're watching this video, maybe you didn't pay a lot of attention to Georgia last year, Carson Beck, and you've just heard Georgia fans talking about Carson Beck this offseason, you know the story there. When a player transfers away from a team, you have a large percentage of that team's fan base that are going to all of a sudden pretend that player was no good. So you might have heard some Georgia fans say some disparaging things about Carson Beck, whatever the case. I'm not one of those people. Again, I think he's one of the best 10 quarterbacks in the country. And if he can come back at 100% of what he was before the elbow injury, I think he's going to put up video game numbers at Miami. I mean, the reality is, without crapping on the ACC, just the stone cold facts, he's going to be playing a lower level of defense on average week to week in the ACC than what he saw in the SEC. That's just a fact. And he had 2 of the best passing seasons in Georgia history going up against SEC defenses week in and week out. The guy can sling the ball. You're going to need a running game. He was hampered last year at Georgia by the lack of a running game, and he can't make that up for you. Can he pick up a first down on 3rd and 3 once a game, maybe a 4 or 5 yard gain on 3rd and 3 if something breaks down? Yeah. Outside of that, you're not getting much from him from the waist down. You're not getting any of these 70 or 80 yard sort of highlight touchdown runs that you see people like Jalen Milroe. I mean, it's just not happening with Carson Beck. You're going to have to scheme some stuff up with wide receivers, get him open, that kind of thing. Let him sit in the pocket, protect him. I think the strength of Miami's offense is their offensive line. I think that's great news for a guy like Carson Beck who likes to sit in the pocket and kind of pick defenses apart. So we'll see. We'll see. To me, while Carson Beck gets a lot of the focus and attention when people talk about Miami this offseason and what they can do in 2025, and oh no, they lost Cam Ward and they got Carson Beck and he's coming off the injury and what can he do and the receivers are new and blah, blah, blah. If that defense doesn't get a whole lot better in a hurry, it's not really going to matter what Carson Beck does. If the defense isn't significantly better in 2025 than what it was in 2024, the outcome is going to be the same or worse for Miami, regardless of how good Carson Beck is or can be as quarterback of Miami. Because we saw that last year. The reality is, and even if you're a Miami fan, I hope you're accepting what I'm about to tell you. Your offense in 2025 is not going to be what it was in 2024. It's not. That was the best offense arguably Miami has ever had. And even though they've been down for 20 plus years, They had some unbelievable teams in the 90s and early 2000s. And I don't know if any of them offensively could compete with what Miami was doing last year with Cam Ward and company. So the offense is going to take a step back in 2025, even in a best-case scenario situation. Carson Beck is fully healthy. He plays well. The receivers in him are able to gel and all that kind of stuff, right? The offense is not going to be what it was last year. It doesn't need to be if your defense can improve a significant amount, right? It's not ideal to be winning all these games 48-45. That's not what you want to do. You would much rather be winning these games 35-21, right? 31-17. The defense has got to start limiting these teams offensively. They got to get off the field on third down. They need more negative plays, turnovers, all of that stuff. The defense has just got to get better across the board, or it's not going to matter offensively how better or worse they are post Cam Ward and now with Carson Beck. So to me, that's the question about Miami in 2025. Yeah, everybody wants to talk about the quarterback because you lose Cam Ward and Carson Beck comes in and quarterbacks get so much attention, so everybody wants to talk about that. The defense is the story. The defense has got to be a lot better. But here, the bottom line, if Miami would have beat Syracuse at the end of last season and made the playoffs, what do you think they would have done in there? They had no defense at all. I mean, that was bad. It looked like every Lincoln Riley team I've ever seen. And how many times in a row did Lincoln Riley go to the playoffs? And every single time they got their ass beat and lost in the first round. I mean, the guy's been to the playoffs 3 or 4 times. He's never won a game. That would have been Miami last year, even if they would have got into the playoffs. That defense has got to get better. Now, odds in terms of the betting market. What are the expectations for Miami in 2025? Well, when it comes to winning the ACC, they are second. That's probably not a surprise. I think everybody knows Clemson is the favorite in the ACC this year, but Miami's not far behind them. Clemson is a favorite at plus 120. Miami just behind them at plus 380. Big drop off after that when you get to Louisville at plus 750 and then SMU at plus 850. Now, Miami does not play Clemson, but they do play Louisville and SMU. So, you know, of the top 4 teams, they play 2 of them. Georgia Tech is the 5th odds in the ACC. And like I said earlier, Miami dodges a bullet. They don't have to play Georgia Tech this year. Georgia Tech's had their number lately. So anyway, Miami's got the 2nd best odds to win the ACC, which means in all likelihood, they should wind up in the ACC championship game if things go like people think they will go. But they don't always go that way. Now, in terms of overall wins, what's the expected win total for Miami? Again, this is a betting number here, 9.5. So obviously you can't win 9.5 games. People bet on that. So people bet, I think they're going to win more than that 9.5, which of course would be 10, 11, or 12. Or I think they're going to win less than this 9.5, 8-4, 7-5, whatever the case. 9.5, the expected win total for Miami. They of course were 10-2 last year. The 2 losses late in the year on the road at Georgia Tech and on the road at Syracuse. All right, it's time to get to the schedule. We're going to go through it. Uncle Lou's going to tell you how Miami's going to do. I'm going to give you a winner and a loser for every single week here. I don't know if you can start off with a tougher game here than Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's going to be better than they were last year. I was not the biggest Riley Leonard fan, their quarterback. Now, when it came to sort of putting the game away at the end, yeah, I mean, he running between the tackles for 4 and 5 yards at a time, he was great. But I really think he held that offense back from a passing perspective. And unlike Notre Dame in years past when they were pretty good, I actually like Notre Dame's skill position players now. They're wide receivers. Now, they didn't get to feature them much last year because Riley Leonard's not really the type of guy that's going to sit in the pocket and kind of pick you apart. But Greathouse on the outside, I think, is really good. They got a couple of really good wide receivers. And, of course, one of, if not the best running backs in all of college football, Jeremiah Love. He's a Heisman contender, a Heisman candidate, top 10 in terms of Heisman odds. As far as running backs go, he's got the best odds to win the Heisman. He's really, really good. They got a big lines of scrimmage. And at quarterback, they're going to have a new quarterback, Carr, taking over there for Riley Leonard, who's out of eligibility. I think Notre Dame's going to be a more well-rounded, balanced offense in 2025 than they were in 2024. Notre Dame, to me, was more of a like a time of possession and play good defense. They reminded me kind of the Georgia teams from the early 2020s when they had those good defenses and ran the ball a lot. And it got them a long way, right? They won a couple of playoff games, beat Georgia, ended up coming up a little bit short against Ohio State in the national championship game, but probably the best Notre Dame team we've seen since the last time they won a national title in 1988. And like every really good team, they lost players to the NFL draft. They lost players to graduation. They lost a handful of players to the transfer portal, but they return a ton of talent. I just talked about a lot of it. They're going to have a really good offensive line, brand new quarterback, but both the wide receivers are back. Jeremiah Love is back. In fact, they got 2 running backs that are back, and they get back about half the defense. They lose some, they bring some back, but I think they're going to be really good defensively again. They play great special teams. They don't tend to make a lot of mistakes. This is going to be a tough game here for Miami. It's kind of a throwback, old Catholics versus convicts sort of mini rivalry that popped off in the 80s and 90s between these two teams. Notre Dame has gotten the better of Miami the majority of time. I think they're 18-8-1 against Miami all time, and I think they get the win here too. I think Miami starts off with a loss. I think Miami is good. You're going to see that as we go through the schedule here. I think right now, Notre Dame is a level or a tier above Miami. You know, people like to do these tier rankings where they, you know, these 5 teams are elite and these 8 teams are in tier 2, and then whatever tier you would sort of put Notre Dame in, Miami's maybe a tier below that. And the reality is, I just don't trust Miami's defense enough in game 1 against Notre Dame. I've got to see Miami play some real defense in 2025 before I can trust them to start the season off with a win against what I think is going to be one of the best offenses they play all year, Notre Dame. I can't do it. It is a home game for Miami, but Miami's got one of the worst home field advantages on the planet. I mean, they don't have their own stadium. They lease an NFL stadium. It's off campus. I'm assuming this game will be sold out because it's week 1 and it's a big opponent in Notre Dame. But generally speaking, there's about 12 people at a Miami game. It's just not a great home atmosphere. I think Notre Dame goes in there and gets the win. Miami starts 0-1. They rebound the following week against Bethune-Cookman. That'll be a relatively easy win for Miami. They're 1-1. Same thing the following week against South Florida. They shouldn't be able to compete with Miami. I don't think they will. Miami will be 2-1 when they host Florida in week 4. Now, Miami beat the absolute soul and will to live out of Florida last year. That was without DJ Lagway. That was early in the season, and Graham Mertz was still the quarterback for Miami. He had not gotten hurt yet at that point. Lagway sort of took over around the halfway point of the season, and Florida was a little bit better offensively with Lagway. Lagway will be starting here if he's healthy. He's had an issue staying healthy, and this is 4 weeks in, so we'll see. I don't think Miami is going to blow Florida out again. They beat them. What would they beat them last year? 41-17 or something like that. It was just a beat that. Yeah, 41-17 in the swamp. I mean, they were ready to fire Billy Napier at halftime of that game. It was bad. I don't think it's going to be that bad in 2025, but I do think Miami will beat Florida. You're talking about the tier thing we're talking about, where maybe I think Miami's a little bit below Notre Dame. Well, I think Florida's a little bit below Miami. A home game, again, not a huge home field advantage for Miami, but you do get an advantage in that you don't have to play at the Swamps. And I think Miami gets the win over a Florida team that I think is overhyped in the offseason based off of a quarterback who's been injured half of his college career, DJ Lagway. I think Miami gets the win. They're 3-1. Then they have their first bye week before taking on their biggest rival, Florida State. They play them on the road. Now, Florida State, like last year, has completely turned their roster over through the transfer portal, and they've got some talented players. There's no doubt about it. They brought in some talented players. They brought in some talented players last year, too. I don't like the quarterback, Castellanos. I don't think Florida State's going to be very good again in 2025. No, I don't think they're going 2-10. I mean, that was an anomaly. I know as a Miami fan, you laughed all year at Florida State. I did, too. Okay? They're not going 2-10. Hell, they might triple their win total and get all the way to 6 wins this year, Florida State. One of those 6 wins ain't going to be against Miami, though. You do have to play them on the road, but surrounded by bye weeks, so you get an extra week to prepare, heal up any hurt players, and you get a bye week the following week, so you don't have any game to even get caught looking ahead to the following week. Ain't Miami handles Florida State again. You're still sitting with just the one loss, and that's to Notre Dame. Then you have what might be your most difficult conference game of the season at home against Louisville. But if you notice, this game is on a Friday night. If you're going to play on a Friday night, it better be at home. I don't know why the ACC is doing these Friday night games. I don't think any of these major leagues, major college football conferences should be playing Friday games. It's just a bad idea. I have seen so many better teams lose on the road on Friday. I don't know what it is, if it's the short week, if it's just not used to playing on Fridays. I don't know what it is. I would absolutely hate it if my team had to go on the road as a favorite and play on a Friday. I have no confidence in road favorites to win games on a Friday. Now, this game is not a road game for Miami. It's a home game, and so all that works in Miami's favor and against Louisville. This was one of the best games of the year last year, like I mentioned, and I think Miami gets the win again. I think Miami beats Louisville coming off that Florida State win. They still have just the one loss to Notre Dame, but this is going to be a really good game. Brom might be the second best coach in the ACC, only behind Dabo Swinney. I'd probably put him slightly ahead of Mario Cristobal right now. I think Mario Cristobal is close, but right now I'd probably go with Brom at Louisville. It's just, I like what he's done there. They made the ACC championship game a couple of years ago, nearly made it last year. They beat Clemson in the regular season last year. But I think they come up short against Miami. I think Miami gets to win at home over a good Louisville team. And then you get Stanford at home, which is great in that you don't have to travel out there, which is obviously a waste of time. Stanford's terrible. Miami will beat the soul out of them. Now, this might be your second most difficult game. In fact, it might be more difficult than the Louisville game because it's on the road. Rhett Lashley, another guy making a name for himself in the ACC, head coach of SMU. They have their quarterback back. They made the playoffs last year, completely fell apart on the road against Penn State, an absolute turnover, an avalanche of turnovers in the first half. That game was over before it started. But anyway, they're expected to be good again in 2025. Can they make a return trip to the ACC title game? Well, it might come down to the winner of this game, right? I think Miami's got a chance to get there. I think SMU's got a chance to get there. Obviously, Clemson will be the favorite. It could be the winner of this game sort of finds their way into the ACC championship game at the end of the year. You got to go on the road. You got to play them there. This is going to be tough. We saw what happened to Miami when you got to this point of the season last year. You sort of started to lay a couple of eggs on the road. I think they get the win. I think Miami beats SMU on the road. I think this is going to be a great game. And so far, this is the game I have the least amount of confidence in. I think SMU is good. And SMU can beat Miami. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do. So if maybe you're mad at me about the Notre Dame pick, I'm making it back up here because I can see a lot of scenarios where SMU gets the win here. I'm going to go with Miami. Still just one loss for the Canes heading into the month of November. Home against Syracuse. Miami ought to win this game by 40. This game cost them everything last year. A shot at the ACC, a shot at the playoffs. It was embarrassing. It's at home this time. I expect Miami not to overlook this game. I expect Syracuse to get Miami's best effort, whether they win or lose against SMU. Worst case, I think, for a scenario for Syracuse is if Miami were to lose to SMU the week before, because then you're playing like a Miami that's got no more room for error pretty much, and it might beat you by 100. Miami might win the game by 100. Anyway, I think Miami will beat Syracuse. I like Fran Brown, good young coach, turned Syracuse around last year, but they lost a ton too, including their quarterback, leading wide receiver gone. Seems like they might be due for a little bit of regression. Not a lot. I think they'll win 7 or 8 games, but I don't know if they'll get to 9 wins like they did last year. I think Miami gets the win and gets some revenge over Syracuse at home. NC State at home. I'm totally done with NC State. I'm off the NC State bandwagon. This constant yo-yo from year to year with NC State, I'm just done with it. Expectations through the roof heading into last offseason. They come out, they're terrible. So now this year, there's no expectations for NC State. So my guess is they're going to win 8 or 9 games, but not really win anything beyond that. And then next offseason, everybody will be telling us again that NC State's going to be the team to beat in 2026, and they'll come out and win 5 games. Or so. I'm just off the NC State deal. I'm not a believer in Dave Duren anymore at this point. He's been there forever, and he seems to keep bumping his head against the same ceiling every other year. I think Miami beats NC State at home with little or no problem. But now you got problems here. You've got 2 road games to end the season. I've been watching college football for a long time, and for the last 20 years, Miami has lost one or both of these games. It's just like clockwork. I don't care. Yes, you're better than Virginia Tech. Yeah, you're better than Pitt. If you played these 2 teams 100 times on the road at Virginia Tech, you'd win 99 of them. If you played at Pitt 100 times, you'd win 99 of them. Well, that one time that you would lose is going to be one of these 2 games. I don't think Miami wins both of these last 2 games. So I'm almost willing to just let you, the Miami fan, pick which one of these games you think it is you're going to lose. I can't pick Miami to win out back-to-back road games. I'm going to go with Virginia Tech as the loss. Tough place to play. This game could be at night. I don't know how good or bad Virginia Tech's going to be this year. They were another team that was hyped up last offseason and never really lived up to it. Maybe it was a year early and they end up being good this year. I don't know. It's a tougher place to play than Pitt. You play up there at the Ketchup Bottle or whatever that place is called. I do like the Miami-Pitt series is a good rivalry in that neither one of those people have their own stadium and they have to lease an NFL deal. Pitt plays at the Steelers. Miami plays at the Dolphins. Anyway, I think Miami goes on the road and gets beat at Virginia Tech, and I think they turn around the following week and win on the road at Pitt. So, if you're keeping track at home, that's a loss to Notre Dame and a loss to Virginia Tech. 2 losses. So, same record as last year, 10-2. But key difference here, Notre Dame, not an ACC game. Yes, Notre Dame has a quasi-contract with the ACC where they play 4 or 5 ACC teams a year, but they don't count as conference games. So, I got you losing to Notre Dame, but that's a non-con loss. I then have you losing only 1 game in the ACC, which means 99.9% chance Miami would be headed to the ACC championship game in my scenarios here. I've done this. I've done a Clemson video like this already. I've got them also at, I think I've got them at 11-1 actually. I got Clemson at 11-1 with 1 ACC loss. I've now got Miami at 10-2, but only 1 ACC loss. I have not done a Louisville, Georgia Tech, or SMU prediction video yet. It is possible if one of those teams ends up with just 1 conference loss that you have like a 3-way sort of tie and you'd have to go to tiebreakers to figure out who makes the ACC championship game. But if you made me put $1 on it right now, my bet for the ACC championship game in 2025 would be Miami versus Clemson in Charlotte. I've got Miami at 10-2, dropping a game early to Notre Dame, and then late in the year on the road at Georgia Tech. Just 1 ACC loss for the Canes in 2025, and a trip to the 2025 ACC championship game, which means most likely a trip to the playoffs. Last year, none of the conference championship losers were eliminated from the playoffs except for the Big 12. You remember last year, SMU and Clemson out of the ACC both made the playoffs. Even though SMU lost the ACC championship game, could be a similar thing for Miami. We'll see. Obviously, you'd want to win the ACC championship game if you can. But I've got Miami at 10-2, 1 ACC loss, and a trip to the ACC championship game. All right, let me know down below where I'm wrong. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the thumbs up, and I'll talk to you again soon. Have a good morning.